Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is a very special day because I am in New Orleans at the Trimble Insight Tech Conference. And even more importantly, I'm with Jonah McIntire. And today's topic is the road ahead, what Trimble Innovations mean for transportation. Welcome, Jonah. Thank you. Well, I should say thank you so much for having me at your conference.
No.
So, Jonah, please introduce yourself and your company and what you guys do. Give us the high level, and then we'll get into what you do.
Sure, yeah. So Trimble, obviously, it's a major logistics software provider. Would be by revenue, would be seventh largest supply chain software provider in the world. We also have a number of other divisions. So in total, the company's NASDAQ listed $4 billion a year, revenue business. The other divisions concern themselves with construction elements. So architecture, engineering, construction management, maintenance management, and things that happen in the field like surveillance. That represents maybe 3/4 of Trimble, and then the other quarter is what we call our transportation segment. That's a combination of businesses that concern themselves with the procurement, the planning, the execution, and eventually the settlement of transportation logistics services.
Yeah. Am I right to say you guys are kind of order to cash when it comes to the transportation business?
That's correct. Yeah, as well as pre-order in the deal-making space. So a lot of times people do their procurement, their procurement of services through us. We handle somewhere in the range of maybe $50 to $60 billion a year in procurement of transportation services through our software.
Yep. I think it came out today at the keynote. 1 million trucks are using Trimble software tech. And what was it, 60 billion in transportation spend going through the Trimble system every year.
That's right. It's probably, of that 60 billion, it's probably somewhere in the order of a little bit north of 50 billion that's contracted and another 10 billion that's spot spend.
It's a lot no matter how you cut it up.
Yeah.
So within the transportation space, which is, again, it's still, if you were to cut off just Trimble Transportation,
it's still
a
sizable.
massive transportation company.
Yeah.
I mean, transportation technology company. What are the pillars within that area, the products within there?
Yeah, so people in the U.S. market know us best for our logistics-focused maps. So that's PC Miler, for example, and the turn-by-turn navigation that comes in Copilot.
Yep.
Or one of our transport management systems. So there's Appian for private fleet. There's TMW Suite. It's used by some of the largest logistics providers, like asset-based carriers in North America. TruckMate, very heavily focused in LTL fleet operations. Also Innovative, which is, again, used by some of the largest asset-based operators in North America, or our maintenance solutions like TMT and fuel tax, fuel optimization. Those are the things that are best known in North America. Outside of North America, what we're best known for are the solutions that relate to, they're more shippers, frankly. So there are people like Nestle and P&G, AB InBev, those kind of companies, and they have to do with the procurement of logistics services, the planning of them, the execution, real-time visibility, getting data back during execution, and then the invoice to cash process. Altogether, you're talking about a nearly 3,000 people kind of business just in the transportation segment, doing about $550 million in annual revenue.
Yeah, and I would say you guys fly under the radar compared to a lot of other names in the space.
Totally.
And I don't think that will be for long. This is my second year at the Trimble conference. Very impressive, and it's kind of the who's who of logistics, logistics tech, I should say, that is your partners. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, Jonah, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Yeah. Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the juggernaut that is Trimble.
Absolutely. So I grew up in the U.S. My father was in the military, so moved around a lot. I ended up finishing high school and doing university at University of Missouri Columbia, and had a good time there. Then I joined Build-A-Bear Workshop, so large U.S. retailer, to help run supply chain, and then was at Manhattan Associates, helping them run and stand up new business units around Asia mostly, and then went to Panalpina, which at the time was fourth largest logistics service provider, and was helping them build their internal IT solutions for their major customers. Mm-hmm. I started a company that was it was a software provider. It was a early sort of exploitation of cloud computing. At the time, cloud, if you brought up cloud, people would be like, okay, but is it safe? Can you really use it? It's like, yeah, you can. So we realized its potential for supply chain planning and optimization, and you could take a workload that would usually have to be done on one server, and you could kind of spin up like 100 servers, run them all for an hour, and get a better solution than if you ran one for 8 hours.
Right.
So that was eventually sold to GT Nexus. Then I was part of GT Nexus sales leadership until they were sold to Infor. Then I went out and started another company that was applied AI for spot procurement.
Oh, wow.
And then that company was eventually sold to Transporion. And then I was part of Transporion leadership, and it was eventually sold to Trimble. So that's how I ended up at Trimble. Now I lead all the product and engineering for the transportation segment.
So you mentioned Transporion. That was originally a European company. And what is their focus?
Yeah, their focus, they're an interesting company. They're born into the internet age. They really only would take on problems in the industry that were between companies. So if a good way to think about this is if you could solve something by being single player mode and just within one company, then that probably wasn't something they wanted to touch. They wanted to touch things like the buy-sell relationship between logistics service provider and a company like Nestle. The Nestle needs to buy services. Someone like a DSV or DB Schenker needs to sell services, right? So they would sit at these intersection points where neither side could really rely on its own IT purchases. They both had to agree to use something that was common, and they became essentially the dominant logistics software in Europe. In the end, when it was so it was German company Schwabian. For people who are in Germany, they're like, it's not just German, it's Schwabian. So from a particular place in Germany. And when it was eventually sold to Trimble, it was the largest acquisition Trimble's done, $2 billion purchase price, pretty substantial.
Yeah, and we should mention, Trimble's done quite a bit of acquisitions over time. And I would also say, I think last year they've had a number of spinoffs, and it's this whole idea. I forgot the exact thing, but it was something build. You had a whole process, and I forgot what you guys call it.
Yeah, I mean now under Rob Painter, the new CEO since 2019, I believe, we've been pursuing this connect and scale. So the former CEO, there's only been 3 CEOs in the history of the company. Very, very unusual for a publicly listed U.S. company. So you have Charlie Trimble, the founder of Trimble. Then you have Berglund, forgetting his name, I think Robert Berglund, but second CEO for a long period of time. And during his period, there was this really strong growth in which it was acquisition fueled. They would buy companies that were, a good fit, but they mostly just left them to run as they were. Right. And so you eventually ended up with realistically over 100, businesses that each had their own general manager and their own sales and their own marketing and everything. And then under Rob Painter, they've been pursuing a corporate strategy in which they want to condense this down to very clearly defined segments. So that's why we have a construction, area,
Right.
and we have a transportation area. And then within those, we want to see, even between them, but especially within them, we want to see significant scale benefits. So if I just take it within transportation, I ask myself this question all the time of I don't want to be on something unless I can see a reason why you need to be, 550 million in revenue and nearly 3,000 people to succeed, because I don't want to be working on the topic where we're approximately as good on that topic as a 100-person startup.
Yeah, well, that's a topic I wrote down, because before we hit the record button, we were talking about the role of an incumbent versus the role of a startup. Where right now and it really is really part of the AI discussion, because a lot of companies run out and say, "Hey, we'll do this with AI, and we'll replace your team with AI."
Yeah.
And it gets more bombastic. But then when you start talking to the industry leaders, the people like Trimble, they say, "We're working with the largest companies in the world. We can't, we can't take chances. It's not in their culture. It's not in your culture. We're going to do it. We're going to do it right. It's going to be measured. We're going to test it. It's going to be secure. And when we launch it, you're going to be absolutely delighted. Not, well, hey, what'd you expect? We just started 10 weeks ago."
Exactly.
Well, anyway, I want to talk about a whole bunch of things with you. So, first and foremost, this conference is great. I was here last year, and I learned a lot, and I say it all the time. Every conference you go to, people talk about visibility. I always say, you go to this conference, this is where visibility comes from. And that is, you'll see brokers go, "Oh, well, we have end-to-end visibility, real-time visibility." I said, I used to say real-time visibility when we had EDI that updated every
day, or something,
3 times a day, whatever it was, and we go, real-time, give or take a few hours.
Totally.
But anyway, you go to a lot of conferences and they talk about visibility. Here is where the visibility comes from.
Totally.
And anyway, I've really enjoyed the conferences. And I think what's also interesting about this conference is all those people out there in the pavilion there, they're your partners, but a lot of them also compete with you in other
competition too,
and you cooperate where you need to serve the customer, and you compete, and it's all seems to work. And they all say, we need the Trimble ecosystem to make our product best for our customers.
Yeah, it takes a lot of maturity in an organization to be able to tolerate this co-opetition relationship. It's super interesting for me to watch, frankly, because I lead the product team. The product team decide essentially where we will compete and where we will not compete. And you can see this tension between sort of visionary product leaders who are very uncomfortable with unresolved conflict. So they either need the other companies to be part of their grand vision, in which their competitive nature is co-opted into being a partner.
Right.
Or they need them to be, pure competition, where they have to be, we win, they lose. They have to be overcome in this almost, theological level,
Yes.
kind of win against evil. And then there's, the reality is much more nuanced than that. For one thing, in B2B spaces like enterprise software, the industry doesn't want total domination and monopoly by one vendor. They want choice. They do. And if the closer you get to kind of a true monopolistic situation, the more they will almost encourage and fund and support and nurture startups to create competition. So the customer base doesn't want one to rule them all. There's not a monopoly on great ideas and focus on them. If you want to be a bit like Microsoft used to talk about, the power of platform is that more money is made by the people on you than you. Right. You leave more money out there for everybody. Right. And so it takes quite a bit of maturity to see the competitive nature and embrace, where appropriate, Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Microsoft. I think the whole internet is a whole bunch of different companies that
Yeah.
compete, and you
Yeah.
ideally, hopefully, you never have your internet get shut off because they're in a fight and they one term. Now we have seen it in cable TV. There's nothing worse than you want to watch your team and you go, oh, they turned off my team because
because
the
of a
cable
contract
company
dispute.
can't figure something out with the providers. But the internet works that way. Our mobile phones work that way.
I mean, it's ironic because if you go back in history, like back at the kind of starting moments of the internet, late 80s or mid 80s, there really was debate about, because at the time there were these alternative closed internet models that were being proposed. And there was debate about like, it's not going to work. No one's going to take responsibility. And there's going to be a tragedy of the commons effect if the internet is just this Wild West where anybody can kind of play any role that they want to, and then they can disappear if they go out of business. And there has to be a vested interest, a someone who owns and runs the network.
We got to be adults here because, again, ultimately you're serving a shared customer.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And if you think it's kind of like the cutting the baby in half thing.
Yeah, exactly. The King Solomon,
Yeah.
King David or King Solomon, where you have to think, you have to have your interests have to be aligned actually with the customer, and from the customer's perspective, they're not best served by this sort of lock-in, lock-out effect.
Right.
Right.
Well, anyway, the conference has been fantastic. I was here last year. It's even better this year.
Last year was interesting because I think on the first day of the conference, we announced that we were divesting mobility, and that was a big shock.
I know. Yeah. I interviewed Rob Painter, your CEO, and Jack Kennedy, the CEO from Platform Science at the same time.
Yeah.
And I remember I used the term telematics, and Jack said, I don't know why we say telematics. I go, well, what do you want to call it?
Yeah.
You're the one who should name the industry.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you know this history, but just to mention it, you mentioned, because you talked about visibility, Charlie Trimble, the founder of Trimble, he spun out of Hewlett-Packard because he had been working on the, soon-to-be released GPS. So, at the time it was military only, right? Access to GPS.
Okay.
And then, but everybody who worked on it knew that it would be released for commercial use. Like that's a process that the U.S. goes through. Their DARPA investments in military use eventually need to be released to commercial use, right? In due course.
Right.
And so what that meant in practice is this constellation of satellites. You could get the signal from the satellites, but you couldn't decrypt them. And they were going to allow decryption. At first, it was down to a certain resolution. Now it's like full resolution. But you could decrypt them, but you needed a device. Someone had to build these devices that would take the antenna, that would take the signal, and it would decrypt the signals, and then it would compute where you are and give that information to the user. And so they still to this day hold a ton of foundational patents on GPS, like a ton. And so the real core reason why Trimble entered the transportation field like these other fields is because it's a field that really concerns itself with where something is on the earth. And that's its like origin of, it's all coming from applied GPS technology. So.
I like it. I like it. Well, there's a lot of things else I want to talk to you about. So of course, we want to talk about AI, super important. And you asked me what part of AI would we want to talk about. And I've said practical applications. Sat through a few of the talks today. Yeah. And it seems as if that's a central theme running through this. So talk about how you guys are using AI and how you're really on this route of practical application as opposed to hype.
Yeah. About 18 months ago, we put together an applied AI group within the segment, particularly coming out of Transporeon. We put together an applied AI group, and the mission was to transform ourselves using AI before we tried to make products. We were seeing competitors that were, offering or claiming to offer these, like, as you described, kind of bombastic AI capabilities. And, the first question we asked ourselves is, like, how could we go to our customers and purport to help them go into the AI age if we ourselves have not gone into the AI age. It lacks all credibility. And so we first set forth to do this internally. So if you skip forward now 18 months, we have produced a number of agents as colleagues. So they basically work in our teams as colleagues, and they do significant percentage of the work of the company. So I work in the area whose primary concern is to change the code base of our software. We do a lot of things. We meet with customers and stuff, but in the end, the way that you measure us is, the way that we manifest our thinking about a product is we change the code. And so a good measure of how much AI is changing our business is to ask, what percent of the code is written by AI? So now, if I look at the last 30 days across the entire segment, 20% of the code was written autonomously by AI. So that means it's not suggested, it's just written entirely by AI. It's reviewed by a human, but when I say that it was written by AI, I mean the human doesn't change anything. They just review it for safety and then commit it. But that's across a large group. Like my team's 1,300 people, so it's a large group of people. If you look at the 10 most active products, it's 45% of the code is written by AI. Now, that means it's almost a doubling, because that's 45% on top. That's essentially a doubling. If you look at previously, the 55% would have been everything. Now it's only 55%, so it's a doubling, right?
So you're eating your own cooking here before you serve it up for anyone else.
Exactly. And then where we go with this is we see our segment is already past its peak headcount. So we're still growing double digits each year, but within the executive team, we see that we've essentially passed peak headcount. We're heading down. So we'll be able to sustain, somewhere in the 12 to 15% year-over-year growth with a declining number of employees over time. Now they'll get paid more, frankly, because by being more profitable, we can share that profitability with these more valuable employees. If I go back to the statistic I just gave a second ago, so 20% of the code base changes are written by AI, but that only increased my cost base by 1%. So it's a 1% increase for a 20%, a 1% increase of cost for a 20% output. And I think when we talk next year, this will be above 90%. I think we're on track to have almost the entirety of our code base written by AI.
Wow.
You still need so what's interesting is you still need human ingenuity, because there's this leap of creative insight that tells us what it is we want the AI to do, right? Someone must speak and say, this is my opinion on a topic. For example, the best way for us to facilitate dispatching of a truck is this way, and I want somebody to make it. Someone's got to have that creative insight. But once you have the creative insight, to go from those words spoken in a natural sense to the implementation of that into software through code, that part will be automated.
Right. I always think about this, and I would love your opinion on it. So let's say we're using AI for this, whatever the function is. And I used to have 10 people, and I've kind of moved them around to other places. Now I have one person, the leader of that space. I really cannot get rid of that guy, because he's ultimately the one who is responsible for that.
Yes, exactly.
And I joke about it sometimes, is you can't fire that guy because someone has to be blamed if it doesn't work.
Well, that's true.
And AI wouldn't care if you yelled at it.
No. I mean, that's legitimately a role of why humans are retained. They're the moral crumple zone, or the ethical crumple zone of the car, where when something goes wrong, so if I take the coding example, every line of code that this AI produces gets reviewed by a human. And if the human changes anything, we don't count it in the statistics. So it's the 20% is just it passed human review.
Right.
But if we make a mistake, if any mistake is made and someone asks like, so did a human review this? And I say no, then that's my job. So, so the human reviewer is kind of like a more ethical crumple zone for the car. If something goes wrong, by having the human there, you sort of have this way of showing that you are responsible, right, as a decision maker. To your other point, though, fundamentally, the people who remain. So, in one sense, it does destroy jobs. Like people are very uncomfortable with that, but the reality is that it's a labor.
That's since the beginning of time we've used tools to eliminate jobs.
100%, exactly. So the washing machine destroyed jobs, right? The
tractor destroyed jobs.
So it's like let's not get too emotional about this. It destroys jobs, but it also, for the jobs that remain, it increases their value and their job security, because the total value being produced is the same or higher, and there's less people who have to get a slice of the pie, right?
I've seen. I worked in automotive for a long time, and when I first started in automotive, there was people doing jobs that were very difficult, lifting, kneeling, standing on their tiptoes, doing repetitive activities. There was a whole bunch of stuff that we soon realized is going to injure them, hurt morale, hurt quality. You're not going to produce good quality if the people doing it are getting hurt. Over time, all the hard jobs went away. So if you walk through an assembly plant today, you'll see kind of calibrating the machine and the process, checking the process, make sure it's continuing. So there's always that person, but there's a whole bunch of technology that's being used that took away all the hard work.
Totally.
And I don't think anyone's complaining and saying, hey, my grandpa used to lift engine blocks into a car.
Yeah, and scrape his knuckles every day, and exactly.
So, and there's all of us probably grew up doing clerk work.
Totally, yeah.
That we didn't particularly enjoy. Your buddies would say, "What'd you do today?" I played in spreadsheets all day.
Yeah, like I retyped. Someone gave me something, and I retyped it into. I remember I had several jobs that involved essentially retyping and scanning, but people are like, oh, scanning. Not scanning into like interesting data entry stuff, but just taking a piece of paper and converting it to a PDF and then storing it in a system someplace, right?
Yeah, so you guys are using first AI internally to update all your systems.
Yeah.
And so are you starting to roll out the same AI to your customers? And what are they seeing in terms of?
Yeah. So 6 or 7 months ago, when I took the current role that I'm in, I set an objective for, at this conference, we would have at least one clearly valuable AI feature per customer type. We have customers like, they use our maintenance management solutions, right? So they're planning the maintenance of their fleet. We have others that they do the dispatching through us. We have others that do the fuel tax compliance by state. We have others that do the driver pay. There's a lot of different groups here. Right. But with my team, I said, we are not going to go to our annual conference and on the most important technological shift, have nothing to say. Like we're also not going to hype it. So it's like we this is where I think the realistic thing that we did, that is what incumbents are focused on as opposed to startups, is we made features that play well with the current installed applications.
Right.
And yet help people get some of the benefits and experience of the AI age. The next cycle that begins after this conference is to make AI native products. So things that they would be wholly impossible before the AI age, and now they're possible. And so it's you have to. I think one of the differences between the incumbents and the startups is this deeper respect for the change management and the diffusion of technology. Like that's our role. We didn't invent generative AI, right? That's other labs that did that. It's our role to diffuse it into the industry.
Well, I say this all the time regarding the big companies like Trimble, is they have installed customers who bought it 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And the early adopters weren't small. They were the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
Now they have millions and millions of transactions.
Yeah.
And they just continue millions and millions of transactions. And I've heard this, a dozen times over the last few years. Oh, we got to move them to the cloud. You're like, yeah,
It's a big
good luck. Where'd that budget come from?
Yeah.
And, you've seen it also when there was some consolidation within the transportation management systems.
Yeah.
And then a lot of big companies suddenly said, wait, if we're going to be dragged into the cloud, let's go look and see if there is a better option for us, because they hadn't looked for a transportation management system in 35 years. The guys who did it are long gone, and
it triggers the selection process.
And it also a little bit of a crisis, because you go, we have never bought one. The collective team has been using a software that we trusted for the last 30 years, and they got bought, and now we're being told we're going to move to the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this attention to the true needs at scale of large businesses is something that startups often, I mean, not all of them, of course, but they often miss. For example, they miss the fact that they genuinely have more risk of messing up than they have of missing out. So if you take large, we work with IKEA and Nestle and Walmart, and AB InBev, and these are large businesses.
They have a few shipments every day.
Yeah, exactly. If you take somebody, you take somebody like a Nestle, and you say, well, the upside of adopting this pretty whizzy AI technology is that it's going to save you 10% on your freight spend. It's like, okay, that's cool. Well, okay, the downside if it doesn't work is that you don't ship or receive goods for 2 days. It's like, okay, well, I can tell you which of those matters more to an established business. They kind of by definition, they are market leaders, these companies I'm talking about. They only need to become a market leader once. They have the right. It's like it should be easier to sustain the market leadership. All they have to do is, it's not they have to play defense, but their calibration is to play defense because they're already there. Especially, it's not like we're talking to them in recipe formation or branding or something. We're talking about something that is secondary to their business. Transportation, they don't want to spend a fortune on it, but it's not going to, if they transport a little bit better, it's not going to make them, it's not going to win the market share.
Right. Yeah. My brother-in-law is a CFO in automotive, and I remember a year or two ago, last time I talked to him about it, I said, so what's the percentage logistics spend compared to revenue? And he says, in automotive, it's 5%.
Yeah.
And it's really optimized. And I said, in your office, do you ever focus on that? He goes, why? Why do you do that?
He's like, what did I just tell you? What
and
the
he says
percentage?
5%. And I was in automotive for a long time, and every once in a while somebody says that has to be expedited, and it's going to cost. I expedited stuff to China for $400,000.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody said
the factory was going to go down.
Yeah, and I remember somebody said to me, "You have to explain that." I said, I don't have to. It has to launch. That's I'll send you an email. Launch. That's it.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody said, "You owe an explanation." I said, "No, I don't. My responsibility is to launch."
Yeah.
And I think when you're working in transportation, if you're working at a transportation company,
you lose that perspective.
You don't have that perspective. And by the way, if you're the vice president of logistics and transportation at these companies, clearly you care.
Yeah.
But in the overall scheme of things, it's not the top priority, and you're not going to take giant risks for a little bit of savings.
Exactly. Actually, you're zeroing in on what many startups miss about these companies is that. So, for example, startups that look at this and they go, "But we can save you 10% on your transportation." What you miss is and they ask questions that try to validate their own view, because they'll be like, how much is your transport spend? They'll say, we spent 100 million, and it's like, okay, how much of that is in the following conditions? And they'll answer, and they'll be like, okay, well, we can give you a 10% savings, and that's a 50, out of 50 million, it's 5 million a year we're going to save you. What they're missing is exactly a perspective that your brother as a CFO has, and it's what the successful logistics VP knows. The successful logistics VP in these companies, they know that their role is to facilitate manufacturing or sales, not to impose limitations on them. Right. And so when they're like, okay, it's 10% savings, but anything could go wrong. They go, no, we're going to do a small pilot, a little edge case. You're going to give me a proof of concept.
You also don't have unlimited manpower, so you say, well, where can I save some money?
Yeah.
And what can we do right? And you say, well, our labor costs this much.
Yeah.
Our material cost is this much, and I'm going to focus on logistics, which is maybe the 10th highest spend,
and yet might distract everybody else. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So before we hit the record button, we were talking about, you said something about 3 generations of technology you have inside of Trimble, soon to be 1 generation. But talk about the 3, and I suspect you're not the only ones. I suspect anybody who's been around for a minute has the same 3 generations. Talk about those.
Yeah. So if you look at the technologies, they show themselves as a set of technologies that originated before the internet. You know this. I mean, often you know this by looking at them, but you also know this by things like you can't access them through a browser because they weren't meant for browsers. You got to install something on the laptop or on the machine, or you got to Citrix into somebody else's machine to see it, right? So that's the first generation. Second generation, they were born in the internet age. They're meant for a browser. Sometimes they were meant to be a shared application, kind of how LinkedIn is a shared thing.
Right.
Sometimes they're more for one company at a time, but they're internet age. And then the third, which is the newest, are native to the AI age. They make assumptions about who's using it that are different. So the stuff that's native to the AI age is assuming that other AI will be using the application. So when we're designing our native AI products, I do not assume that there's a human being who logs in and looks at the screen. I assume it's an agent that is the principal user of that application. Now, what's interesting about so that's the technology. Then you have a human element. So if I look at my team, about 1,300 people, and it's super important as a leader that you got to acknowledge you've got people who were part of generation 1, and we're here because of them. They're we get to play in this. We get to play in the semifinals because they won the first games.
Standing on the shoulder of giants.
Exactly, shoulder of giants, and you have, as a leader, you have to correctly handle the legacy, and I mean that not in a negative sense, but the heritage almost of you are entrusted with treating correctly the thing that they built, and if they detect in contact with you that you're dismissive of what they've accomplished, that it's just the old stuff that you have to get rid of, that doesn't work. They need to feel, and they deserve to feel appreciated because they made the business actually.
Right.
Then you got you have to sort of deal with the heritage of the past. You've got the real challenges of the present. You need to be able to tell people what it is that we should be doing right now. Not where are we going a year from now, because a lot of AI talk can be very future oriented, but it's what is this month about? What are we doing now? And then you also need to give them a hopeful future, this. Why is it worth their one precious life to work on this thing? Why is this the best place for them to spend their life working? So I think this past, present, future, you have to kind of at once straddle all 3 of these as a leader, and it matters for the internal team, but then it also matters to our customers, because incumbents, we were there in the past with these large companies that are our customers. We understand their current pain points, and they also expect us to bring them into the future successfully. So you have to like bring it to your customers as well.
Yeah, there's some real challenges when you talk about, disrupting industries, and we talked about this, losing jobs.
Yeah.
I was part of automotive when everything kind of went to the CAD systems, and
yeah, that was a huge shift.
And I was young, so it was like, oh, okay. And I remember teaching guys who knew way more about cars than I did how to use, and how to use the CAD systems, and they did things that were, they didn't understand. And I remember a lot of them would walk around and say that the CAD model is wrong. I was like, it's just not. I don't know what to tell you. It's just not. And I remember there was that resistance, and I keep thinking, it's like you're playing a game for a long time where you're the very best, and then all of a sudden you go, hey, the game changed, and now you suck.
Yeah, it's like you're a millionaire in a currency that just got eradicated. Like you have Deutschmarks or something, and suddenly you're like, well, wait, my Deutschmarks aren't worth anything. It's like, they're not. Yeah. Sorry, man.
Yeah. So if we're talking 1 year from now, and I hope we are, at the same conference, what do you think? Give me a sense for how much the world will have changed for Trimble customers.
I think it's going to be a lot of change. And I have to admit, I am very practically oriented and hate hype. So
you're not going to overhype this.
Yeah, I'm. I used to get in trouble with my old bosses where I remember really clearly in 2014, so 11 years ago, I had an interview, something like this, and they were like, so why is 2014, the year of change? I was like, I don't think it is. I was like, I think we're going to look back on this and think it's a quite banal, kind of crummy time. Like, I don't think that there's much.
This is incremental crawling along.
It's incremental improvement, and like that's great, but I don't think it'll be notable in any real way. And I think the 11 years since has sort of more or less proven that out. I think there was a period of time where we had honed in on a set of internet-based software techniques, and then we largely plateaued those for maybe 10 years. And the real breakthrough now, there was a little uptick based on mobile, and then now the real explosion is coming from AI. So I think it'll be a year from now, I think we'll have a very different business, a very different proposition to our customers. I think you'll see the first of the AI native products, which will be as different from the current generation products as they are from the install on your desktop with a key, off of a CD.
So there's always this AI human handoff, and that's what I always wonder about. So AI can move very quickly, but what about the teams that are using it? When I used to ask you to give me that report, and now it says, hey, the report got here, and now I look and I go, wait a sec. Can I trust this? I trusted Jonah. Now it came automatically, and anything that looks at all off, I'm going to circle and go, I don't know. I used to trust Jonah to do that, and now a system creates it, and I don't know. So that human AI handoff.
Yeah. So there's two elements to this that I want to double click on. The first is people react to the output of AI differently if it's doing a job that they perceive they could do well versus a job they couldn't do. So case in point would be if you ask AI to go look up tax law for you as you're getting ready to file your taxes, you're not a tax lawyer. Like when it gives you a good summary of the tax law, you're like, hey, this is great. This really saved me time. I didn't have to contact or even if you I had this experience of I used it for tax law, then I contacted the tax lawyer and I confirmed in 15 minutes what would have previously taken hours and hours of billable time, where I had just literally a checklist of, is it true that X? Is it true that X? Is it true that X? And the expert confirmed all of them, and I was like, okay, fine, we're good. Now, that is a fun. If you can't do the job, when AI does it, your feeling is relief and kind of joy. when you ask it to do a job that is your domain of expertise, you become the nitpicking quality control person.
Exactly.
And so I find that actually younger people or less experienced people are more successful in incorporating AI into their job. Because it's a bit like the CAD example you gave.
Right.
Like if you couldn't do design before, CAD is a help to. If you could do design before, CAD is a change,
I was a very weak draftsman. My dad owned an engineering business. I was a very weak draftsman, but when the CAD systems came, I was
You were the whiz. You were the
better. Let me put it that way.
But then the second element that matters about this is in that AI to human handover, like it's so easy to avalanche the human. So what we're seeing in our business as we build AI as colleagues and use them as colleagues is that it's like having little bits of light speed jumping. So you have this we can move at light speed through some steps. Then when it hits a human, it's back to human speed. And you can have AI can generate a 100-page report. Humans can't read a 100-page report very well. I mean, it takes time, but they also just aren't good at processing 100 pages of information.
Right. I remember when the internet came around, I remember many people saying, but I heard friends say, I'm going to buy something on the internet. I'm going to put my credit card on the internet. Like,
totally.
What?
Yeah.
What am I, crazy?
Yeah.
And then I even remember I saw a screenshot not so long ago, and it was the Amazon website when it had a 1-800 number at the top. So everyone who was using Amazon was like, as long as I can call them on the 1-800 number, and so they were kind of slowing it down just because they weren't comfortable with it. And I wonder the same thing. Will I trust an AI agent that says, hey, give me your credit card information?
Totally. Yeah. I think that we have a couple ways that we solve for this internally. And this goes back to learning from our own experience how to transform a large business.
Once you figure it out internally, you can bring it to your customers.
So a couple of techniques we used. One was just like between humans, you build trust in an iterative process. Right. And so let me give you a concrete example. If we have a system that purports to take over a process, you might begin with the first thing it does is it just tells you what it plans to do. It makes a suggestion. It's like if it was me, I would do this. Later, it's going to give you maybe 3 or 4 options from which you choose. Then later, it gives you one option. And you can stop it, but if you don't stop it, it's going to execute automatically after a period of time. Right. Then it executes automatically and it informs you, and then finally it executes automatically and it doesn't inform you. And so you basically stair step up to full autonomy of the system. Yep. Another way that in some cases, that approach works, and then other cases what we do is we take something and we do full autonomy from the beginning, but it's very circumscribed. Right. And then you start, for example, it might be full autonomy of replying to customer queries, but only for this product line, because that product line is very simple. Right. And then you iteratively expand the circle. Yep. Both of these would not be out of place with a new human hire.
Right. What occurs to me is that something my son-in-law said. He's an investment counselor, and he said, I'm an investment counselor, and he said, it's 10% investment, 90% counselor, especially when the market's bad. Yeah. And we don't typically think of our technology company as our counselor or as our therapist, but I think when there's big changes like this,
it's part of
you have to, but I think also coming from Trimble, there's the trust that you've built up over the last 40 years. So it's a little different than saying, hey, what's the name of your company? What's your website?
Yeah, totally.
If you've been working with Trimble for a long time and they say, we have something, we want to transition you out of this to this. Yeah. Do you want to talk about it?
I think it's part of the role of diffusing technology. You're not just, it's not just installing stuff. It's also informing and sharing a mental model of how the best way to use the technology.
It reminds me, you used to always talk about with technology and bring a new tech, we'd always say, what are the business rules around it? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it was like, well, yeah, we have the new technology. First, the only way you can buy that product is using the new procurement software.
Yeah, that's true. I think the role that we and other technology companies have, like ultimately our customers are not technology companies. Like they're doing something else in the world, and they rely on us to vet, to select, to integrate, do all these steps, and part of it is also to bring them good training and mental models for how to use
Just
it.
don't hurt me, Trimble.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the penalty for messing up is greater than the penalty for being late.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So, Jonah, I've gone way past my time with you, but what I'm going to do is the best I can to summarize and write your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Jonah McIntire. We're talking about the road ahead, what Trimble Innovations mean for transportation. And so first we talked about the conference. Wonderful conference. It's got all of your partners here. It's got a lot of your competitions here. It's got a ton of shippers are here. I was kind of surprised by how many shippers and trucking companies are here. We talked about AI, and the theme that I've gotten yesterday and today is, yes, we're doing AI, practical application.
Very practical focus.
No hype. I think we said no hype a few times when we were talking. One of the things I've heard throughout this is you have all these different systems that you guys have, and now it's always been connected, but it's getting more and more connected. And I think we didn't really say it, but I always describe it with my phone is Trimble's the operating system. So if there's the Android operating system, the Apple operating system, Trimble is that. So if you want the driver to have to type in a whole bunch of stuff, get rid of Trimble. So if you want all that information to flow safely from system to system to system, so the driver says, I don't have to type anything into this. So anyway, getting back, that connected ecosystem, it sounds very hypey, but it's what you guys have been saying for a long time and getting better at every day. We talked about the 3 generations of software, the pre-internet, the internet, and the AI age, which you guys are quickly moving to that AI age. And then we talked about this whole idea of the incumbent versus the startup.
Right. A
lot of the, bombastic statements from our AI startups, you guys can't do that. It's just, it's you have to take a measured approach because you have customers that are massive and who've been trusting you to do the right thing for them for 40 years. It's a different relationship. Anyway, put a big old bow on this one, Jonah. Final thoughts on the topic.
I mean, it's such a amazing time to be in the industry.
Oh, it is.
Right. So the potential for change is the enablers for the change, and the potential for the change is huge. And so, and yet it's not going to happen by itself. So it's this beautiful combination of enablers, but also fertile ground for people who want to leave their mark on the industry, as leaders or individual contributors, whatever. It's very exciting. So I'm very happy to be alive and participating in the industry at this moment.
Excellent, excellent. I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, and any of the links you go to Mark and T give me, I'll put in the show notes. Great. Jonah, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, same here. It was really great.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.